According to your text, Napoleon Bonaparte was quite a short man, just 5 foot 3 inches tall. Actually, that's not quite correct. Historians have corrected that and said that those measurements actually come from the way that the French were measuring during the time. It got kind of misconstrued, and their measurement, see, he might have said 5'3" there, but they were using a different type of system, and he's actually more like 5'5", 5'6", which was pretty average as far as height of a French man at the time. So he's not quite as short as people might have thought. We're going to start with a quick intro. It's a tiny bit annoying, but it can, I don't know, maybe you'll like it. It only lasts for a minute, so if you don't like it, it's okay. It'll be over soon. So whether Napoleon was 5'3" or 5'6", he cast a long shadow over the history of modern times. He would come to be recognized as one of the world's greatest military geniuses. He's been compared to Alexander the Great of Macedonia, of Hannibal of Carthage, the guy who took the elephants into Rome, remember? And Julius Caesar of Rome even. In only 4 years, from 1795 to 1799, Napoleon rose from a relatively obscure position as an officer in the French army to become the master of France. What I'd love for you to do today is not only be taking notes, which you should write Napoleon Forges an Empire, section 3. You don't need the black, but also be filling in your graphic organizer as you go. You're going to notice that I don't have a lot of details in your notes today because I want you to pick, and you can slow down and pause to pick something that I have to say. So you choose for yourself what you write underneath early life, for example. Hero of the Hour. Napoleon Bonaparte was born in 1769 on the Mediterranean island of Corsica. When he was 9 years old, his parents sent him to military school. In 1785, at age 16, he finished school and became a lieutenant in the artillery. And when the revolution broke out, Napoleon joined the army of the new government. In October of 1795, he became the hero of the hour. Fate handed the young officer a chance for glory. When royalist rebels marched on the National Convention during the Revolution, a government official told Napoleon to defend the delegates. Napoleon and his gunners greeted the thousands of royalists, people who supported the old king, with a cannonade, which means cannon fire. Within minutes, the attackers fled in panic and confusion, and Napoleon Bonaparte became the hero of the hour and was hailed throughout Paris as the savior of the new French Republic. On the top right, you have him in his younger days. In 1796, the Directory appointed Napoleon to lead the French army against forces of Austria and the Kingdom of Sardinia. Crossing the Alps, the young general swept into Italy, won a series of really remarkable victories, and next, in an attempt to protect the French trade interests and to disrupt British trade with India, Napoleon led an expedition into Egypt. But he was unable in Egypt to pin them down, and the British Admiral Horatio Nelson defeated his naval forces. However, Napoleon managed to keep those kinds of stories about his setbacks out of the newspapers, and therefore he remained a great hero to the people of France. So he kind of controlled the stories that were coming out about him. So one more time, he swept into Italy, where he was very successful, and then he went to Egypt, and he wasn't as successful, but he did manage to keep those stories out of the paper. So people still viewed him as a hero. In 1799, the government that we talked about yesterday, remember 2 legislative branches and a 5-person directory, that directory had gone corrupt. France just seems to have trouble with governments, man. But anyway, by 1799, the directory had lost control of the political situation and had lost the confidence of the French people. When Napoleon returned from Egypt, his friends urged him to just seize political power. Napoleon took action in early November of 1799. Troops under his command surrounded the national legislature and just drove out the members. Hang on. Sorry. The lawmakers who remained then voted. Now, of course, he's got a military standing right there waiting while they vote. So if you think that they were just kind of voting of their own free will, of course they probably weren't. But they voted to dissolve the directory altogether. And in its place, they established a group of 3 consuls, which should sound familiar because this is now like Rome, right? And the triumvirates of Rome. One of the consuls, was now going to be Napoleon. Napoleon quickly took the title of first consul and assumed power of dictator, so he's now in kind of control over the other 2 consuls. A sudden seizure of power like Napoleon's is known as a coup, from the French phrase coup d'état, which means blow to the state. Again, you guys should be picking for yourself what to write under coup d'état. So if you're not quite sure, this coup d'état there, that's French for coup d'état. So underneath that, you should be writing about him coming back, seizing power, becoming one of the consuls, and then seizing control of even that group of 3 consuls. At the same time of Napoleon's coup, France was still at war. By 1799, Britain, Austria, and Russia had all joined forces with one goal in mind: to drive Napoleon from power. So you might think about writing that too, that they're at war, and Britain, Austria, and Russia are all trying to drive him out of power. Once again, Napoleon rode from Paris at the head of his troops. Eventually, as a result of war and diplomacy, all 3 nations signed peace agreements with France, and by 1802, Europe is at peace for the first time in 10 years. Napoleon was free to focus his energies on restoring order to France. Okay, now if you can move for a second to your organizer, I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about Napoleon as a person. So first of all, he's born in 1769, and he dies in 1821, and here's just a little aside about him as a person. Because of his small stature and his really thick Corsican accent, Napoleon was mocked by fellow students at military school. Don't be a bully, guys. This is what happens. Joseph Stalin said he was bullied. Adolf Hitler got picked on, and look what happened, so don't be a bully. But Napoleon was haughty and proud. Napoleon refused to grace his tormentors' behavior with any type of response. He just ignored them, preferring to lose himself instead in his studies. He showed a particular passion for 3 subjects: classical history, geography, and mathematics. In 1784, Napoleon was recommended for a career in the army, and he transferred to the École Militaire, the French equivalent to West Point, in Paris. There he proved himself a fairly poor soldier, except when it came to artillery. His artillery instructor quickly noticed Napoleon's abilities. He's most proud, ambitious, and aspiring to everything. This young man merits our attention. At first, Napoleon pretended to be constitutionally chosen leader of the Free Republic. In 1800, though, there was a vote of the people, and it was held to approve the new constitution. Desperate for strong leadership, the people voted overwhelmingly in favor of the Constitution, and this gave all the real power. It was kind of a stamp of approval upon Napoleon, or at least that's the way he chose to view it. Restoring order at home. Napoleon did not try to return the nation to the days of King Louis XVI. Rather, he kept many of the changes that had become part of the revolution. In general, he supported laws that would strengthen the central government. I'm going to pause there because these are the sorts of things that he did that were good, that you might consider writing down. He strengthened the government and achieved some of the goals of the revolution. His first task was to get the economy, another good thing, to get the economy on solid footing. Remember what debt Louis XVI had put France in? He's looking to solve some of those problems. Napoleon set up a really efficient method of tax collection and established a national banking system. You might consider writing those down. A system of efficient tax collection and also a national banking system. In addition to ensuring the government a steady supply of tax money, his actions promoted sound financial management and better control of the economy. Napoleon also took steps to end corruption and inefficiency in the government. He dismissed the officials that he found to be corrupt, and in order to provide the government with trained officials, set up something called lycees, which were government-run public schools. These lycees were open to male students of all backgrounds, and graduates of those particular schools, the lycees, Lycees, were appointed to public office on the basis of merit rather than family connection. Sorry, we're still not quite done with this. One area where Napoleon disregarded changes introduced by the Revolution was religion. Both the clergy and many peasants wanted to restore the position of the Church of France. Responding to their wishes, Napoleon signed a concordat, or an agreement, with Pope Pius VII. Pope Pius is Pius VII. This established a new relationship between church and state. The government recognized the influence of the church, but rejected the church's control over national affairs. The agreement gained Napoleon the support of the church, as well as the majority of the French people. Perhaps his greatest work, almost done, was the Napoleonic Code. You should write that down, Napoleonic Code. This gave the country a uniform set of laws. It eliminated injustices. However, it actually limited liberty and promoted order and authority over individual rights. So while establishing a set of rules, it did, strip people of some of their freedoms, but at least there was law and order now. For example, freedom of speech and the press, established during the Revolution, were restricted under this code. The code also restored slavery in French colonies of the Caribbean. In 1804, Napoleon decided to make himself emperor, and the French voters supported him. On December 2nd of 1804, dressed in a splendid robe of purple velvet, which you see on the top right, Napoleon walked down the long aisle of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. You've seen pictures of Notre Dame when we were looking at Gothic architecture. The Pope waited for him with a glittering crown, and as thousands watched, the new emperor took the crown from the Pope and placed it on his own head. With this gesture, Napoleon signaled that he was more powerful than the Church, which had traditionally crowned rulers of France for years. We're going to pause right here, and I would like you to stop, go back to the class webpage. There is a biographical sketch on Napoleon there that I'd like you to watch that'll take about 5 minutes, and then we'll come back. Thank you.